Is this a sign that both parties are willing to compromise to get the measure passed before a looming government shutdown?
Compromise?
New Hampshire Senator Kelly Ayotte joins me now live from Washington. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning to you.
What's the latest that you can tell us about this? I know that there were a lot of closed-door meetings last night going on amongst Republicans and also Democrats.
Well, there have been. I think it's good news that the Democrats are abandoning their desire to increase taxes on job creators to fund the temporary payroll tax cut. But, you know, that wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. So I think now as we look moving forward, I hope that they will really step aside and make sure that we get the funding bill done for the government, which has to happen tomorrow. And unfortunately, Harry Reid has been holding that hostage, saying that the funding bill that has been agreed on, the appropriations bill between the appropriators between the House and Senate, can't go forward without the payroll tax issue. But we've got to resolve that tomorrow. So I hope that that he'll drop that right now.
So how do you believe then that Congress will decide to pay for this payroll tax cut extension? Because the plan coming out of the House from the Republicans there, it was complicated. It was several different areas that you would earn money, including freezing federal pay for a year, et cetera.
Well, there's a pay-for provision in what the House passed, and obviously I think that's a strong package that should go forward. Hiring freeze with federal workers, other spending cuts, that makes sense instead of a permanent tax increase on those that are out creating jobs. So I think that has to be taken up in the Senate. And I also think one thing we could do is if the Democrats don't want the Keystone Pipeline issue in it, why not break up the package and allow a vote on each part of it, including the Keystone Pipeline at a 51-vote threshold? Because I know that there are enough Democrats that it will pass that will support that pipeline. So Harry Reid should let that vote come to the floor.
Wow, that's breaking news this morning if you believe that that could happen. Thank you for that. I want to move on to another topic that's near and dear to you, and this has to do with those mandatory defense cuts that would spring into action, or will now, because the super committee failed. I know that you are one of the Republicans vowing to put a stop to those trigger cuts. How do you plan to do that?
Well, I'm deeply troubled. I mean, Secretary Panetta, you had him on before. He said that if the sequestration goes forward, we will have the smallest Navy since 1915, the smallest ground forces since 1940, that we will hollow out our force, that it'll be devastating to our military. It's absolutely wrong. We can't hold our military men and women hostage to what they need and what our national security requires because Congress isn't making those decisions on spending cuts. So I'll be working with Senator McCain, Senator Kyl, Senator Graham to bring forward a package of spending cuts rather than devastating our national security. It's absolutely wrong. We should be holding our military men and women up, not using them as hostage.
Are you under the same sort of time deadline that we're looking at now with Friday and the budget looming? Those cuts were supposed to go into effect in 2013. So do you have a little time to try and find other areas to cut in place of defense?
We do, Gretchen. Actually, we're going to introduce a package at the beginning of the year, but it's important that we go forward with it right away because it takes time for the Department of Defense to actually implement those types of drastic cuts. But again, why are we subjugating our national security for our failure to make the hard decisions in Congress? We can do this, and we should be holding up our men and women in the armed forces, not holding them hostage with the sequestration. It's really wrong.
As you just mentioned, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has been warning Congress about those automatic cuts, saying this: we would have the smallest ground force since 1940, the smallest number of ships since 1915, and the smallest air force in its history. But my final question to you, Senator, is that the President has been very clear that he is in agreement with those automatic cuts happening.
Well, I think it's outrageous that our Commander-in-Chief wouldn't stand up for our military men and women. And I would urge the President to listen to his Secretary of Defense. He is the Commander-in-Chief of this country. He has a duty to make sure that we protect our country. It's a constitutional duty. And so I would say, Mr. President, please, we can find other ways to reduce spending. Let's not put our country at risk.
All right. You've been listening to Senator Ayotte from the great state of New Hampshire. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Coming up on the show, he was one of the first American soldiers to face war crimes in Iraq, but some shocking evidence set him free.